Good morning, guys. On this gorgeous, not Thursday morning webinar, I am Chloe Tetro, the coaching lead for Ready Care. For this morning, we're going to take a deep dive into advanced well-being. For a lot of you, this won't be new information, and I realize that, but looking at these types of things can really help us if we're currently feeling a little bit overwhelmed, a little bit like our emotions are off kilter, off balance. And it'll just serve as a little refresher for your mind to just go, I knew that. So what I'll touch on for this morning is mental states and emotional states, as well as a little bit about overall well-being, and end, as I usually do, with a few practical steps for you guys to take away and mull on for the duration of I suppose your week until the next time we chat. If there's anything that I touch on slightly in this webinar that you have questions on, you can pop them in the comment section. There are also loads, the whole archive of video store that we have, which you can click back into if there's particular things touched on that you want a little bit more information. The point of today is to give a kind of high-level gloss over. So I'll start off with what is mental states. Now, we kind of have our own ideas on what that is, but I'll give you a kind of definition to take away and stick in your pocket for a rainy day like today. Mental states are an umbrella term. So they're kind of a catch-all term that'll encapsulate things like your thoughts, your emotions, your perceptions, and overall psychological well-being at any given time. So it represents the dynamic and changing interplay of all of your cognitive processes and your emotional experience, how you feel in that and how that influences you, and how, because of those influences, you're likely to pick up things a little bit skewed and a little bit influenced from that particular space. So that mental state is always changing. It's constantly shifting, and it'll influence your internal factors like your thoughts and your feelings, and external factors like your environment and how you're likely to react in interactions. So understanding and maintaining that healthy mental state is crucial for several reasons. Firstly, your mental state profoundly influences your decision-making processes. When your mental state is balanced and positive, if you're in that kind of Zen mode, you're more likely to make rational and thoughtful decisions that serve you short-term, yes, but also serve you long-term. And remember, the nail I keep hammering on these chats is it's all about your day-to-day experience. And if you can cultivate a really positive day-to-day experience, you're going to be winning at life. Now, it's not always, a walk in the park and a garden of roses, but really, really giving it that attention to say there are particular things that I can overcorrect here to make my day the best that it can, or at least help me manage when things go a little bit pear-shaped, as they tend to do. Now, with stressed or negative mental state, that can cloud your judgment, and it can lead to hasty and regrettable choices. Your mental state will affect your stress levels. We're big mulling machines. We love a good mull. So chronic stress, which will stem from this persistent negative mental state, is linked to loads of health problems. And I've got a video on chronic stress. I'm pretty sure Andrew does as well, if you are interested in scaring yourself silly. But it includes things like physiological problems, things like anxiety, depression, and cardiovascular issues. Mental states will also play a vital role in your overall life satisfaction, and a positive one will enhance your ability to enjoy life, build good relationships, and achieve your goals. So it's all sounding fairly rosy where that's concerned. So I chat a lot about neuroplasticity, which is, as you know by now, because I mention it in most videos at some point, it's your brain's ability to rewire itself. Now, when it comes to mental states, why that is important and why it has significant implications for our mental state is it means that those states aren't fixed, but they can reshape our brain pathways through things like our experiences and behaviors. If you're constantly engaging in negative thinking, your brain is going to strengthen those neural pathways, and that'll make it easier to fall into those thought patterns. Whereas then putting in the initial energy, because that's what it is, and you'll know this from the talks that we've had. The brain hates change. It loves similar things. So if you have ever found yourself in a bit of a rush, that bit of a mental kind of hole that you kind of go, jeepers, I know I'm in a bad kind of mental state. I'm just really finding it tricky to snap out of it, as Cher would say. And what's happening there is your brain goes, okay, this is the pathway that Chloe wants to think every day. And she's thought this thought a few times, and she's felt those feelings a few times. So we're going to help her by making it easier for her to get to those places, because that seems to be what she wants to do. And we're trying to conserve as much energy in the brain here as possible. So we're going to strengthen those pathways. It's going to take less energy to get there. So you're starting to see how that can become problematic, because over time it becomes more difficult. It takes more mental energy to get yourself out of those things. Now, it's absolutely not impossible in any way, shape, or form, but what I would like to impart is it is difficult. If you're feeling difficulty in changing some of those mental pathways and patterns, you're not doing anything wrong. You're not failing in some kind of way. You're not lesser than that very annoying coworker that seems to always have a pep in their step and are like, good morning, everybody. Okay, Mr. Good Mood every single day. You're not comparatively failing in relation to that. There is a physiological process that makes it more difficult to snap out of those things. So if you realize, first and foremost, it is going to be difficult. If it's difficult, I'm doing it right. If it's difficult, it means I'm in the process of coming off of that neural pathway. So understanding that there's a degree of challenge and change is the first step to going, does this feel challenging? Great, I must be on the right path with it. And don't take it as a closed door of it's hard, therefore I can't get out of it. It can seem that way. But bringing conscious awareness to recreating some of those pathways, and I'll chat a lot about those in other videos as well, about the best way to create new neural pathways is to make it yummy, is to make it seem like there's a far better reward at the other side of that. And in the beginning stages, a lot of that is going to be habit formation, i.e. you're kind of faking it till you make it at the very, very start. Find something that is really rewarding for your brain to latch onto, because the brain's always looking for a reward. It's always looking for the easy way out. So making it really clear what your alternative is going to make that, it's going to facilitate that new neural pathway a lot easier by really, really placing a reward on it and faking it a little bit at the start. Go through the motions of it, try it on, try different thoughts, force yourself to go, my really annoying coworker is just a person. They're just as deserving as or they have so many good qualities that, you get what I'm saying. Phone it in a little bit at the start and practice it on a loop, knowing that there's a degree of retraining in your brain that has to happen for you to adopt new mental pathways. Now, the caveat that I'll say with that, guys, is if you're experiencing particular negative thought patterns and behaviors, that's not all on you. Okay, I'll put that disclaimer out there. I am a big believer in reframing particular thoughts, but not at the detriment of, are you actually okay? And ask yourself that question from a really honest spot: is, are there changes that need to happen in your life that maybe you're putting a little bit of the blinkers on at the moment because it can seem too much hassle and a little bit more too difficult? And reframing in those scenarios is not good for you long term. If you're in a job that you absolutely despise, it's pointless. And I would be remiss as a coach to say to you, have you thought or have you tried feeling good about it? Reframe your thought into blah, blah. No, like that is not human. That is absolutely not human. I will touch on this a little bit more on the practical side of things, but if there's a consistent thought pattern that you are having that is kind of pushing you into negative space, give yourself the freedom to actually look at that and say, are there changes I need to make? I seem to always be stressed around this particular person. I'm just going to reframe it. They're going through a difficult time. I just have to be more gracious with my time and compassionate, etc., etc. Do you though? Or do you just need to go, maybe I need to distance myself a little bit from that person because I feel better when I'm not around them? I digress. So with the mental state aspect of things, there's a huge correlation between how we think and how our body is. And you know this from if you're having a stressful day, your body is going to give off a whole different signal than if you're chilling at home on the couch. Particularly for those people that tend to get a little bit of an ibby tummy when they're anxious and doing the multiple trips to the loo before a big presentation or a big meeting. That's your brain-body axis. So that connection between the brain and the body it goes both ways. So that means that our physiological state can significantly influence our mental state and the other way around as well. So a prominent example of that would be what's called the gut-brain axis. And thankfully, in the last 10 years, the whole kind of gut oh, my brain's just gone. My own gut brain axis just went whoop. No. There's lots of research around probiotics, microbiome, and the connection to the brain is what I was trying to say there. Thank you. Back on track. So the gut and the brain are in constant communication via what's called the vagus nerve. And the gut microbiome, which is the name for the microorganisms living in our intestines, which is a disgusting thought, but they are our friends. That's what I tell myself when I go, oh, I don't want to think about that. So they can produce neurotransmitters, things like serotonin and dopamine, which are crucial for mood regulation. So serotonin makes you feel good. Dopamine makes you feel like you want to accomplish a task. It's kind of the motivation neurotransmitter. So maintaining a healthy gut can have a really, really positive impact on your mental state. I'm talking reduction of processed carbohydrates, as I always do. It's like, spoiler alert, I'm going to mention they're not good for you. Things like processed foods, high levels of alcohol, it's mostly like processed foods, basically. Like having those once in a while, absolutely not the end of the world. You're not going to do great harm by having those once in a while. But if they become a kind of convenience, quick shortcut of, look, I don't have a lot of time, or I particularly like this particular chicken roll, and et cetera, you're often going to find that your diet and your mood are going to follow particular, they're going to be in parallel with each other. Physical states like chronic fatigue, chronic pain, chronic inflammation, they're obviously going to have a massive knock-on your mental states as well. So to keep that in mind. Chronic pain, for instance, that can lead to massive feelings of frustration, depression, anxiety, which can make worse the perception of pain, and that'll create some kind of vicious cycle within you. So that'll highlight the importance of both the physical aspect influencing the mental and the mental influencing the physical. They kind of interplay with each other. And the takeaway there on that is that if you're exhausted, you're way more likely to think extremely negatively. You're way more likely to, if somebody's like, hey, Chloe, how are you doing? To go, ugh, what? You. Whereas on a different day, if you're well rested and have eaten foods that make you feel good, you might be like, hello, how's it going? Still don't like him, but hello in a pleasant voice. So the kind of the mental state, and I'll move on briefly now because I'm flogging this horse now for a little while, and we have brief time on these meetings. So they include a range of cognitive processes like perception, memory, thought patterns, as well as emotional influences like experiences, not influences, like happiness, sadness, anger, and fear, which I'll go into in a little bit more depth. They're influenced by our subconscious mind, which stores our beliefs, our memories, and experiences that will help to shape our responses to different situations. If you're interested in the more kind of subconscious mind aspect of things, have a quick scan on some of the videos, things like beliefs, memories, experiences. I go into those in a lot more detail. But for the sake of brevity, let us quickly move on to emotional states, which is what I call myself on a bad day. So emotional states and emotional balance is the ability to maintain emotional stability and resilience, even in the face of stress and adversity, as we know. It's a good state to be in, that balanced state. So it involves experiencing a full range of emotions without being totally overwhelmed by them and being able to respond to your emotions in a healthy and adaptive manner. not just responding. That's a whole different ballgame. So emotional balance does not mean avoiding negative emotions, but rather managing them and constructively alongside positive emotions. Don't just pretend you're not feeling good and go, I'm feeling great. What a positive day. Affirmations in the mirror. Like, you're going to end up just feeling totally suppressed and go postal at somebody in your office if that's how you're feeling all the time. But the emotional balance is the cornerstone of mental health, basically. You want to be the conductor, you don't want to be conducted by them. I've learned the very hard way that if I'm really, really passionate about answering something immediately, be that an email or a text, and I find myself typing quickly, I need to go, now is not the time, because I'm about to say something that will probably blow my life up. When emotions are well regulated, individuals are better equipped to handle ups and downs, and that reduces the risk of the chronic stress. Because if you think about it, if you're in a hyper-reactive emotional state, the brain is going to try to put a story on why you're feeling that way. So if you're feeling really, really stressed, the brain is our kind of narrative storyteller. It's finding reasons. It's always trying to contextualize what's happening. So I've had a very bad night's sleep. I eat very poorly, and I know I'm in a negative headspace. I'm feeling really rubbish and I'm feeling really stressed, and my brain's looking for reasons. No, it's seeing my partner breathe out their mouth and it's like, it's you. You're the reason I feel terrible. Or in an office space, it's that, that coworker is there again and God, they should have had that work done. That's why I'm feeling this way. So we tend to stick a narrative to explain our emotional states. That's part of the human condition. Knowing about it is half the battle. But the point here is that in a more balanced state, when you're looking after your overall well-being, you're way less likely to behave from that story you may have told yourself in that big wobble. That big wobble can domino affect things like chronic stress, anxiety, and depression. The emotional balance will enhance your relationships by improving communications, i.e. not jumping down their throat for saying, do you want a cup of tea, love? Go away. It improves your communication. It improves empathy, of course, because you'll know that straight away. If you're feeling stressed and overwhelmed, people close off. Go away, leave me alone, snappy. In a more empathetic mood, if somebody's telling you they've had a terrible weekend, you're actually listening to them and not just thinking, would you please go away from me? And it helps with conflict resolution skills. It'll foster deeper connections, more supportive interactions, and it'll contribute significantly to your overall health and happiness. So when you're understanding emotional balance, it's essential to have a look at the mechanisms, which is the boring part, granted, but it is essential to look at it. So one of the key players in emotional processing is a part of your brain called the amygdala. It's a small kind of almond-shaped structure that's quite deep inside the brain, and that amygdala it's involved in detecting and responding to emotional stimuli, particularly, it's important, those related to fear and threat. So why that's important is your amygdala is actually constantly looking for reasons to feel under threat and fear. And that's made exceedingly worse when you're in your stress response, you're firing adrenaline and cortisol, you're in your fight or flight, you're ready for a fight or a flight. And the amygdala is part of the limbic system. And that plays a crucial role in your emotional processing. It helps to evaluate information of emotional significance and incoming stimuli. And what it'll do is it'll trigger what it thinks, caveat, what it thinks is the appropriate emotional response. So if you're encountering a threat, the amygdala activates that fight or flight response, and that prepares your body to deal with anger or danger, not anger, to Freudian slip. So when you have an overactive amygdala, that can lead to your heightened emotional responses and difficulty in managing stress and anxiety. So where the emotional regulation comes into play is learning to regulate the amygdala's activity, and that'll help with your emotional balance. So there's lots of different ways to do emotional regulation, loads of different ways. I don't have time to hammer in about the importance of mindfulness, but I mean, you'll have heard that already. But a really, really good, immediate, effective technique is breathing exercises. And it's almost cliche. It's like deep breaths, don't send the email, take a deep breath. But actually, deep breathing exercises help to modulate your nervous system, particularly the part of your nervous system called the parasympathetic branch, which promotes relaxation and reduces the amygdala's activity. So you're not just giving yourself that pause in the first in those deep breaths, although that really helps. I'll tell you from experience. But what you're also doing is you're mechanically, that's the one, mechanically triggering a physiological response that is going to reduce the amygdala. You're basically saying, calm down, amygdala. There's no threat here. That emotional response that's doing massive kind of ups and downs, zigzags, I have this on lockdown. I have this much better. When you're practicing those, and there's loads of different ones that you can look up online. There's box breathing is absolutely phenomenal. Loads of different ones that I don't have time to go into, but they are there. When you practice deep breathing, you're also activating the vagus nerve, which sends calming signals to the brain. So the process will counteract that stress response, reducing the feelings of anxiety and promoting a state of calmness. Things like awareness and acceptance of emotions, which I'll go into really, really soon. How are we doing for time? I need to practice talking faster. Is absolutely brilliant. So I'll chat on that in about 3 minutes. Different prompts to get yourself out of that state. So let's go into the overall well-being aspect of things while I have you guys. If you do have questions or comments, pop them in while we have each other live on the call. So overall well-being is that kind of, I hate to use the word, it's so like cliche now, but it's a holistic approach. It's all of the different systems that encompass physical, mental, and emotional health. So we're focusing today on mental and emotional, but it does ricochet, it does knock on. It knocks on to the physical as well. So it's nurturing your body with proper nutrition and exercise, maintaining mental clarity, and fostering that emotional stability. When you have your overall well-being, it is going to lead to a more fulfilled, balanced, and healthy life. We know this instinctively. Now, the one that I'll touch on very briefly is hormonal balance and a small bit about sleep, and I'll just touch on it for a minute. So hormones will play a pivotal role in your overall well-being. They regulate loads of bodily functions, including your mood, including your energy, and including your stress response. Cortisol, dopamine, and serotonin, they're your 3 key hormones involved in this particular process. Cortisol, which you would know usually as the stress hormone, is released in response to stress and helps to prepare the body to handle those emergencies, that fight or flight. Get out of the office quick, somebody's coming to talk to you. Chronic stress, though, can lead to elevated cortisol levels, which negatively impact your mental and physical health, leading to anxiety, depression, and various physical ailments. So when you have chronically elevated cortisol, it basically means you kind of have, rather than have like what's called acute, which unfortunately does not mean it actually is cute, is when you have an acute spike, it's there, it rises, it crashes, it's there, it's over. You're momentarily stressed because a stressful event has happened. That's very different from chronic stress. Chronic stress is like a low-grade stress constantly. People will start to notice their memory gets a little bit wobbly, their cognitive process get a little bit wobbly. They can start to develop digestive difficulties, kind of IBS type symptoms, things like picking up coughs and colds to beat the band, that emotional dysregulation, and actually having a very stubborn belly fat can be a sign of elevated cortisol levels. So if you're resonating with check the box, it might be worth actually giving yourself to the grace to not just go, sure, everybody's stressed, and go, no, actually, what's happening here? This is important. It has a knock-on effect. That's a really, really big thing to look into. The other thing would be your sleep cycles and how important they are. And I know people say, look, sleep cycles are obviously important, but they're really, really crucial for your mental health. And I will leave most of the physical health things like, immune response, metabolic health, cardiovascular health, and poor sleep patterns linked to chronic conditions to the side for today. I actually think Andrew has a great video on sleep if you're interested in the physiological aspects of it. And bad sleep, can it kill you? That kind of catching headline. But from a mental health perspective, having poor circadian rhythms and irregular sleep patterns really, really messes with your cognitive function, your mood, and your decreased mental resilience. So getting to the practical side of things, I'll just skip on certain parts, but getting to the practical side of things is more important than me giving you more theory. Right. So looking to take what we know about, which I know you already know. Most people know this, they've come across the information, but it's nice to get a little bit of a reminder sometimes because you go, oh yeah, I did know that. And yes, I do find myself in a little bit of a funk where I'm in a little bit of a negative headspace rut. I'm finding things are getting the better of me a little bit more. Aha, that's potentially what could be happening here. So one of the biggest things that I will say to you where this is concerned, and it can be on your phone, it can be on your notes app. Everybody's got a deranged notes app. But give yourself the grace of timing 2 minutes. If you can manage 5, fantastic. If you can only manage 1, as long as you're managing something in the day. Something in the day that helps you keep track of your thoughts, your feelings, your experiences. This will really, really help you track particular patterns and triggers affecting your mental state. Now, I mentioned something like that friend. Every time I seem to hang out with them, I leave feeling, I feel terrible about myself. I start to think my confidence is getting lower, and I start to have these kind of machinations types of thoughts. I'm mulling things. If you're keeping track of once a day, twice a day would be brilliant, but even once a day, if you're keeping track, how do I feel? If I feel rubbish, open up the notes app and goes, what's brought this on? What's triggered it? What has happened in the last hour? How has my sleep been? How has my food been? Who have I interacted with? What am I noticing? Because we're brilliant, brilliant pattern finders as human beings. We're amazing at it, sometimes to our detriment, but we're brilliant pattern findings. And you will start to spot something very, very quickly if you give yourself data points. If there's information in there, you're going to start to see a picture emerge and go, it always seems to be after that meeting that I have very low self-confidence. And I start to think that I'm a very bad public speaker, and I start to mull, and that has a really bad impact on my day. Is there something going on here with my confidence levels around talking? Can I have a chat with somebody around that? Ironically, can I organize a way to maybe talk around this a little bit with somebody to help me get through that a little bit better? That's going to have a massive, massive, massive impact on your mental landscape and your emotional landscape. What has made you feel good? Are there ways for you to get more of what made you feel good in your week, in your day? Particularly as adults, we start to think that we don't need to have fun. We start to think like, oh no, I'm too serious and busy, and my plans are too like world domination ambitions, or I'm just too overladen by responsibilities to think about play, fun, or even put on some awful disco music that you're like, oh my God, if anybody heard me listening to this, I would die of mortification, but I love it. And just give yourself that 3 minutes of being goofy and childlike and see the emotional, because remember, it's a two-way street. Your internal goes outwards into your external, but your external also reflects back into your internal. So if there are particular things that make you feel good, get more of those in your day. Start to log. I felt great. What happened there? Oh, a different friend. I always love chatting to them. Getting some more of those social connections will have a massive, massive impact on your well-being. I am a big fan of reframing, but as I said, not to the detriment of you feeling like you're ignoring genuine things going on in your life. Look for emotional triggers, look for mental health triggers, look for physiological things. And all it is, lads, is 2 minutes in your notes app per day. of keeping track of those things. Keep track even of your sleep cycle. The tracking part is going to be the major thing. You don't have to implement changes until you start to go, yeah, there's a direct correlation and I can see something there. Right. I have run out of time for today, but there are loads of separate videos on a lot of the things that I've mentioned around well-being. There's things on boundary setting with people you don't want in your life. There's things on beliefs. There's things on emotions. There's things on sleep cycles. They will all be in our archive. So do have a route around there. And I hope you guys found something helpful in today. If there's any comments or questions, do feel free to pop them in, and I'll do my best to either answer them now or answer them in the comment section later on. Have a lovely, gorgeous day, guys, and look after yourselves. We'll talk to you next time. Bye.